Over the past few weeks, we have traveled into the past. This month, we will continue to reflect on back in those days. And this time, it will be about high school days in Jamaica. The Learning Journey, in association with Turn It Up Tuesday, hosted by Ross Audio, presents Did You Know? And this week, we're going to be looking at high school days back in Jamaica, focusing on Western Jamaica. Remember when you used to prepare for common entrance? And teachers used to have extra lessons. Some gave it free, while others charged. They had it on a Saturday and sometimes on a Sunday. And holidays, Easter break, you had to go up to school or to a teacher's house. I remember one teacher they called Mrs. Horton, that she had this wonderful engagement and she didn't charge us. She just said, come over to my home, and of course, and if you were selected, you thought you had a good chance of passing the common entrance. But that was part of it, because common entrance had some level of anxiety that I've never experienced before. When I actually took my common entrance, I realized that my name did not come out in the first batch. I started to wonder, how did I work so hard and did not achieve the goal of that wonderful news item in the newspaper? I spoke to one of my friends, told him I had a dream, and told him I passed the exam. He said, you must have passed too warm. I felt so embarrassed. But lo and behold, a few weeks after, someone from Kingston would call me and say, wake up, Ron. Look in the newspaper. Your name in there. You big up boy. But most of all, if I was successful in my common entrance, I would get my first long pants khaki suit for September. Yes, in primary school, it's so short pants I had to wear. Long pants meant a good thing. You're now big man. And with big man came other things. So people went shopping. They went to the Bata shoe store down in Montego Bay. You remember Bata? Some people say, I would never shop at that Bata store. But listen, the football boots and those shoes, you got them there very cheap. Bata was the way to go. Then Monday morning, of course, the epaulets were sewed on nicely. On entering high school, everyone was seeking a stripe. And they told stories. Yes, they told a lot of stories at high school. The most fortunate would talk about their trips to Disney World, Orlando. I never knew a place existed they called Disney World. Others told story about, yes man, I was in Kingston. I was enjoying myself, man. We had some nice time in Kingston. I don't know what was in Kingston that time, but they seem to have been impressed. But remember, some would just say, listen, I got country for the holiday. Country meant a lot of things. It meant you were engaging outdoors, you were engaging so many things, and today a lot of our children need to go back to country. The reality is that many who stated that they went to country, Disney World and all about, they simply stayed at their homes too. And what they did at their homes, they just played. They didn't have a lot of TV that time, or the mobile phones, but they were creative. Children in Jamaica were very creative, and that was reflected in the high school era too. Back in those days, the second week of school, you'd start to find new friends. Those who like sports would have greater connections. After all, a few weeks, you'd know the footballers. The girls would find their connections too. And they would also find groups that they wrote poetry. They sang the latest love songs and so forth. Or they just write down the lyrics to these songs. For example, I Will Never Give You Up. Long and lasting love was echoed through grade 7, 8, and 9 in various high schools. Well, you might ask, where did boys and girls hang out after school? With so many schools being released at the same time or dismissal, bell going at the same time, you had a barrage of young people in the Montego Bay area at one particular time. This meant there would be transportation problems and other problems. And you know what? Boys and girls could find excuses to tell their mom, Mommy, I couldn't get no bus to come up, And the boys would say, Mom, I had to walk. No bus or taxi or anything. The government had some vehicles on the roads, for example, buses, but I just didn't like them. So here we go. Many would go to shopping centers and be hanging out there. Of course, the adults didn't like it. I remember one day at Overton Plaza, I saw a security guard talk to a boy to go home twice. And the third time, he was coming after the boy with a long piece of cane. The cane that they beat people in high school? Yes. And the boy started to run away. And the speed at which the security guard was coming, he just slid on his bottom straight up and gave the boy one on his rear end. And the boy was running out of that place. May I go home now, Lord? And started to cry. But those days, shopping centers were a place for people to hang out. Some children thought they were so studious and they would tell their mommy and daddy, "Mommy and daddy are going to the library. I need to check out a book to see what's happening." And when you go there, instead of checking out the book, they are checking out someone from one of these high schools. I saw them with my very two eyes, but guess what? I was not involved. Yes, you might be laughing and say it must have been me. No, I used to take my book. But back in those days, everybody around was a footballer. But remember, you can't be a footballer without a reputation as it relates to the football. You must have some talent. Big men around the town who loved the game knew the budding young footballers and gave them some respect. So if you attended a Jarrett Park match in those days, those boys who knew the big men could sit near them. But for me, I could not. So one day, you know what? I went to Jarrett Park and I said, you know what? There is a nice view. I can sit, watch the game, and no one will be standing in front of me. So I went over to one of these stands. I don't remember the stand because I don't remember. And I took my seat because I came in one of the first persons to come in. I took my seat and was comfortable, very comfortable. The only thing that was annoying me that time was the puffing of those little things they called spliff. So what I did was to continue to settle myself. Then all of a sudden I heard a man saying to me, "Boy, you sit down in my seat, you know." Then I responded by saying, "Me no sit down on the seat, sir." I looked around to see if the other men would support me in what I was saying. Notwithstanding, they just looked away. And one of them said to me, "Little boy, you don't respect big man." So you know what I did? I just took my little self and I moved over. From that day, I say, you know what? I'm not going back into Jarrett Park. Let me go to the hillside. Hillside. Hillside was a spot across from Jarrett Park. It was there I saw one named footballer called Mango Beard attempt to slide tackle a Kingstonian. Somehow the man moved away at the last minute and this sent Mango Beard sliding on his bottom for about several meters. However, my love for the hillside ended as soon as it began. And of course, it finally happened one day. I was sitting watching a game when suddenly I realized that the people sitting on the hillside were running down the hill. To avoid being stampeded, I joined the group and ran off the hill with them. After looking back, I realized there was no police or soldier. I saw some people laughing, and goodness, it was some laugh. Then I heard what was the cause of the commotion. One man jumped up and started running and screaming for help. The other man sitting beside him ran after him. Not knowing the situation, the entire population started to follow the two men down the hillside in a panic. Do you want to know what the issue was? Well, I'll tell you. There was a 40-leg that had crawled up into the man's you-know-where. And of course, the other man heard him whisper and started to run after him to help him. And so the hillside came after him because they thought it was something else. So after that, I decided to take myself away from the hillside. Never again. Montego Bay had several hangout points. Some schoolers would go to Disco Inferno owned by Mr. Crooks, a wonderful Montegonian and Cornwallian. I strongly believe that he positioned Montego Bay in its early days to be the center of entertainment. However, back in those days, the money to go to these shows, it was a lot of money. So we had other spaces that provided, for example, double bill, triple bill movies. For example, the Palladium Theatre, Strand Theatre, which is in my view was a bit above the Palladium in quality. And there was Roxy Open Air Theatre sitting on benches. The one that seemed to have schoolboys' interest was Pastime Cinema. This cinema was located on the top floor of a place located on St. James Street. I could not believe this place showed movies all day. It is alleged that instead of going to school, students would turn up from morning till night to watch movies. The movies watched mainly were Kung Fu, I remember Golden Eye, and of course karate movies. Personally, if you were going to school back then and you knew someone who was watching all these movies, you'd have to stay far. Because they believed that they were karate experts. They talked about the fox, they talked about karate, they talked about so many things, they talked about ninja. Everyone was a karate expert after viewing these kick-face movies as they call it back then. As I close, I want us to remember the Bowl for Bat days, the Stringer Kick days, and other days. And remember, back in those times, we had high school concerts. It's a time of year when we need to relax and share our stories. And of course, learn about others through the stories. Please share your good experiences of your high school days in the comment section of this video. Remember, We have to cherish our memories and we have to preserve them because we want to share them with the next generation. Please look out for a Christmas special presentation that I'm going to do. It's going to be focusing on history coming up as it relates to our ancestors, the celebration of this time and how they navigated their day in their celebrations for this season. Over to you, Rossi.